Your low beam goes out and suddenly a simple bulb swap turns into a wrestling match with a tight engine bay, stubborn connectors, and that nagging fear you're about to snap a plastic tab that was never meant to be replaced. And the worst part is when you finally get the new bulb in, you turn the lights on, and it either doesn't work, or the beam looks wrong, or it burns out again way too soon. If you're here for low beam bulb replacement on Toyota Corolla Cross, the real goal isn't just getting a new bulb into the housing. The goal is doing it in a way that doesn't create the three classic problems: a bulb that's not seated correctly, a headlight housing that's no longer sealed against moisture, or an electrical connection that's kind of on but not actually locked. So let's approach this like someone who wants it to work the first time. First, make sure you're chasing the right failure. People say, headlight is out, but on many cars the daytime running light, the low beam, and the high beam can be different functions, sometimes even different bulbs or different sections of the same assembly. The quickest confirmation is simple: with the car safely parked, switch the headlights to low beam and walk around the front. Then switch to high beam and check again. If one side is dark only on low beam but the high beam still works on that side, you're likely dealing with the low beam bulb or its connection. If both low beams are out at the same time, slow down. Two bulbs can fail close together, but it's also when you should consider a fuse, a relay, or a switch issue. I'm not going to send you deep into wiring diagnostics, but that both sides died overnight pattern is your cue to check the basics before you buy parts. Also pay attention to the symptom. A bulb that's completely dead is one thing. A bulb that's dim, flickering, or changing color can point to a bulb near the end of its life, a poor connection, or moisture inside the housing. Moisture matters because it shortens bulb life and corrodes connectors, and it often starts with a dust cap that didn't get seated properly after a previous replacement. Now, safety and setup. You don't need a full workshop, but you do need to treat the headlight area like it's fragile. Turn the car off, take the key away from the vehicle, and let the headlight area cool if it was just on. Halogen bulbs get hot enough to burn you and hot enough to make you rush, and rushing is how clips break. If you have gloves, use them. If you don't, at least plan to handle the new bulb by its base, not the glass. Here's the part that trips people up before they even open the hood: buying the wrong bulb. The fastest way to avoid that is to identify the bulb type from a reliable source for your exact year and trim, and then confirm it against what's actually installed. Owner's manual sometimes lists bulb types, but not always clearly. Parts websites can be accurate, but only if the trim and lighting package are selected correctly. The most foolproof method is to pull the old bulb first, read the marking on the base, and then match it. That way you're not guessing based on a forum post that might be for a different market or a different headlight design. When you shop, don't get distracted by marketing. What you want is the correct type, from a reputable brand, with a normal lifespan expectation. If your car uses a halogen low beam, stick with a quality halogen replacement unless you truly understand what you're changing. Random LED plug-in swaps can create glare, poor cutoff, and can even trigger errors depending on the vehicle. The point here is a clean replacement, not a lighting experiment. A small but important choice: replace one bulb or both. If one side failed and the other is the same age, the other one is often not far behind. Also, mismatched bulbs can look different in color and brightness, which is annoying and sometimes unsafe in rain. If you can, replacing both low beams as a pair is a good way to keep output even. If you only replace one, at least keep the old working bulb as an emergency spare if it's not too dark or aged. Tools and supplies are minimal, but the right ones make this painless. A flashlight helps you see the locking tabs. Gloves help you avoid touching the glass. And if you accidentally touch the glass, an alcohol wipe or a little rubbing alcohol on a clean lint-free cloth can clean it. You don't need to soak it, you just want to remove skin oils. Now to the actual access. On the Toyota Corolla Cross, the low beam bulb is typically accessed from behind the headlight assembly inside the engine bay. That means you're working in a tight space between the headlight housing and other components. Some people assume they must remove the bumper or the whole headlight. Usually you don't. The trick is to find the rear of the headlight assembly and identify the correct cover or connector for the low beam. Open the hood and look behind the headlight on the side you're replacing. You'll see wiring harnesses going into the back of the headlight assembly. There may be a round dust cap, a plastic cover, or a bulb socket with a connector. Don't just grab the first thing you see. Take a second to compare left and right sides if one is still working. The working side is your reference for what, correctly assembled, looks like. Once you've located the low beam access point, you'll typically do 3 actions in sequence: remove any dust cap or cover, disconnect the electrical connector, and release the bulb from the housing. Dust caps are simple but easy to damage if you force them. If it's a twist-off cap, it should rotate and then come free. If it's a rubber cap, it usually peels off. The key is to pull evenly and remember how it was seated, because that seal is what keeps moisture out. If you reinstall it crooked, you might not notice today, but you'll notice later when the inside of the lens fogs up and your new bulb fails early. Next is the connector. This is where most broken tabs happen. The connector usually has a locking tab you press or lift, then you pull the connector straight back. Don't yank on the wires. Grip the connector body. If it won't move, it's usually because the lock isn't fully released, not because it needs more force. Use your flashlight, find the tab, press it firmly, and then wiggle the connector gently while pulling straight back. If it's been on there for years, it can feel glued on, but it's just friction and age. Now the bulb retention. Depending on the bulb type and housing design, the bulb may be held in by a twist lock base or a retaining clip. With a twist lock, you rotate the bulb base a small amount and then pull it out. With a clip, you unhook the clip and swing it away. Either way, pay attention to orientation. The bulb only seats correctly one way, and that orientation is what creates the correct beam pattern. If you install it rotated, the light can scatter, the cutoff can look messy, and you can end up blinding oncoming traffic while still feeling like your road visibility is worse. That's the paradox that makes people think the new bulb is brighter, but their night driving feels worse. When the old bulb comes out, look at it before you toss it. Read the marking on the base. That's your confirmation of the bulb type. Also look for signs of trouble. A cloudy or darkened glass envelope can be normal for an old halogen, but heavy discoloration, a melted connector, or corrosion on the terminal suggest heat or connection issues. If you see greenish corrosion or moisture residue, don't ignore it. A new bulb won't fix a bad connection for long. Now install the new bulb. This is where you slow down for 10 seconds and save yourself an hour later. Handle the bulb by the base. If you touch the glass, clean it. Then align the tabs on the bulb with the slots in the housing. It should sit flush without force. If it doesn't sit flush, it's not aligned. Don't tighten it down, hoping it will straighten itself. That's how bulbs end up cocked at an angle, and that's how you get a weird beam pattern. Once it's seated, lock it in place with the twist motion or the retaining clip. You're looking for a confident, fully locked feel. Not kind of. Fully. If it's a twist lock and it stops early, take it back out and try again. A bulb that's not fully locked can vibrate, run hotter, and fail early. It can also let moisture in because the rear seal isn't compressed correctly. Reconnect the electrical connector until it clicks or feels firmly seated. Again, don't pull on the wires. Push on the connector body. If it doesn't want to go, check alignment. Many connectors are keyed and only go one way. Before you put the dust cap back on, do a quick test. Turn the headlights on and confirm the low beam works. This is the moment to catch a connector that isn't fully seated or a bulb that isn't locked. If it lights, turn the lights back off and finish reassembly. Now reinstall the dust cap or cover carefully. This is not optional. That cap is the difference between a clean, dry headlight and a foggy one that eats bulbs. Make sure it's seated evenly all the way around. If it's a twist cap, make sure it's fully rotated to its top. If it's rubber, make sure the lip is fully on and not folded. At this point, the bulb is in, but you're not done if you care about how it performs. You need a quick sanity check of the beam pattern. You don't need professional aiming equipment for this basic check. Park facing a wall or garage door on level ground at a reasonable distance. Turn on the low beams. The two beams should look similar in height and shape. If the replaced side looks scattered, higher, or oddly shaped compared to the other side, that's a strong hint the bulb is not seated correctly or is rotated. This is one of the most common, I replaced it but it looks worse, outcomes, and it's almost always installation orientation. Now let's talk about the situations where the new bulb doesn't work, because that's where people panic and start tearing things apart. If the new bulb doesn't light, the first suspect is the connector. It's incredibly common to think it's plugged in when it's not fully locked. Unplug it and plug it back in firmly. Check that the locking tab is actually engaged. If the connector feels loose, it's not right. Second suspect is the bulb seating. If the bulb isn't fully locked, some designs won't make proper electrical contact or will sit in a way that stresses the connector. Remove it and reinstall, making sure it's flush and locked. Third suspect is the bulb itself. New bulbs can be defective. It's rare, but it happens. If you still have the old bulb and it wasn't completely dead, you can swap back briefly to test. If the old one lights and the new one doesn't, you found the issue. If both low beams are out and you replaced one and still nothing, that's when you stop assuming it's the bulb. Check the fuse related to the low beam circuit. Your owner's manual or the fuse box cover diagram can guide you to the correct fuse location. If a fuse is blown, replacing it once is fine, but if it blows again quickly, that suggests a deeper electrical problem and it's time to avoid guesswork. Another edge case is a connector or socket that's heat damaged. If the plastic looks brown, brittle, or melted, the connection may be poor in generating heat. A new bulb might work intermittently or fail early. That's not a keep trying bulbs situation. That's a repair situation. Now, about early failure. People replace a bulb and it dies in days or weeks, and they assume the car has a problem. Sometimes it does, but often it's one of three self-inflicted issues: touching the glass, not sealing the dust cap, or not seating the bulb fully. Touching the glass leaves oils that create hot spots. Hot spots shorten life. Not sealing the cap lets moisture in. Moisture plus heat equals corrosion and stress. Not seating the bulb properly can cause vibration and misalignment, and it can also mess with heat dissipation in some designs. All three lead to the same frustrating outcome: you're back in the engine bay again. There's also the one side looks different complaint. Even with the same bulb type, if one bulb is new and the other is old, they can look different in color. That's normal aging. If it bothers you, replace both. If you already replaced one and the other is still working, at least know that the mismatch isn't necessarily a wiring issue. One more nuance: tight access can tempt you to twist the bulb by the glass because it's easier to grab. Don't. If space is limited, reposition your hand, use gloves with grip, and take your time. If there's a nearby component blocking your reach, sometimes you can move a flexible intake duct or unclip a small cover to gain a bit of room, but avoid forcing anything. If something feels like it requires brute strength, you're probably pulling the wrong direction or the lock isn't released. And that brings us back to why this job is trickier than it looks. A low beam bulb is simple. The environment around it isn't. You're working blind, by feel, with plastic locks that don't like being forced, and with a bulb that only performs correctly when it's perfectly seated and sealed. So if you want a final mental checklist for low beam bulb replacement on Toyota Corolla Cross, it's this: confirm it's truly the low beam, confirm the bulb type from the old bulb or a reliable source, handle the new bulb by the base, seat it flush and lock it fully, click the connector in place, and reseal the dust cap like your bulb's life depends on it, because it does. After that, do the wall check. If the beam looks clean and matches the other side, you're done. If it looks wrong, don't accept it. Pull it back out and reseat it. That extra 5 minutes is the difference between a headlight that actually helps you see and a headlight that just looks bright from the outside. And if you replaced it and it still doesn't work, don't spiral into random fixes. Recheck the connector, recheck seating, test the bulb, and only then consider the fuse or a damaged socket. That's how you keep a simple repair from turning into a broken clip and a second trip to the parts store.